Today we're going to make marinara sauce, as my sister-in-law says, from the redneck Italian kitchen. First thing we're going to do is pour in about 1 ounce or 2 tablespoons full of olive oil. We're going to heat the oil up. I'm using an induction cooktop, so we're not going to heat it real hot. I'm going to just get it to where it starts to simmer and bubble in the oven or in the pan. You can see this. As soon as the oil gets good and hot, we're going to add a tablespoon of minced garlic. Now remember, this is an induction cooktop, so it doesn't take but just a second for the oil to get hot in it. And I've got it on a very low temperature, just enough to make it simmer good. We don't want to burn it, we just want to roast it. Okay. And then we're going to add a 1/2 cup of pretty finely diced onions. I don't want them just minced, but I do want them diced up where they'll cook up real fine and get real transparent. We don't want to eat onions in the marinara, but we do want the flavor in it. Okay. As you can see, the onions and the garlic are simmering, and the onions are becoming transparent, as you can see by the camera. Now, when they get to the point where they've gotten tender and beginning to really more or less caramelize in here in the olive oil and the garlic, they'll begin to have a nice smell to them. Then you want to add the crushed tomatoes. Now, these are crushed tomatoes with basil here. This is a 28-ounce can, which this is going to make a goodly amount of marinara sauce. Okay, now you want to mix the onions in with that well, and the garlic. And we're going to let this simmer for just a few minutes until it comes to just a slow boil. As you can see, I'm stirring this constantly. It's just beginning to want to start to bubble a little bit. This induction cooking is so much faster than a regular stove, but it's also a very gentle boil. It isn't like a hard boil that you would get on an electric stove or a gas range with the temperature turned up. Now, as you can tell, this is just about ready here. It's just starting to get there. Get just a few little bubbles in it. The next thing we're going to do is add a 1/2 cup, which is about 6 ounces, 4 ounces, 4 to 6 ounces of a dry red wine. I use a Cabernet Sauvignon. I wash out my crushed tomato can to get the last residue out of that. You want to pour that into your sauce. Okay. Now, we're going to let this heat up again here. Take it just a couple of minutes to heat. Now, I'm going to add a couple of extra ingredients here to give it just a little more flavor. We're going to add a tablespoonful of parsley. This is just dried parsley. Nothing fancy. You could use fresh if you wanted to. I personally don't think there's any difference in the flavor. We're going to use a tablespoonful of oregano. Now, these crushed tomatoes already had basil in them. And then, to get a blend of more of your spices, we're going to use a tablespoonful of Italian seasoning. Okay, now that's the 3 spices we're going to put in there. We're going to mix this up good. It takes a little bit. It has to get hot so that the spices will dissolve into the sauce. This should be coming to a boil. As you can see, it's just beginning to simmer lightly. All of the spices are mixed well with it. Now, the last thing we're going to do before we put it on to simmer for a couple of hours is we're going to use a couple of pinches of salt. This is a coarse kosher salt. I use 2 large pinches of salt, and I'm going to use 2 tablespoons full of Splenda, or artificial sweetener. This will take some of the acid taste of the tomatoes, crushed tomatoes, out of it, and sort of helps with the flavor. It doesn't make it real sweet. If you like a sweet tasting marinara, you could use a little bit more Splenda. I personally don't really want anything real sweet tasting. Now, we're going to mix this up well. As you can see, it's well mixed, blended together. Now it's thin. Now, we're going to take it, and as soon as the temperature rises back up to just a slow boil or bubble, we're then going to turn the temperature down. As you can see, the sauce has now come to a good light boil, or what we call a gentle boil. I'm going to take it, I'm going to turn the heat down to a really low simmer. Now this heat on this induction cookware says 140 degrees. It's a little hotter than that because we're going to put a lid on it. And we're going to let it cook for about 2 hours and then check it. And at the end of 2 hours, we may take the lid off of it and cook it just a little bit longer, depending on how well it thickens up. This is our marinara sauce after 2 hours of a real slow simmer. As you can see, it has thickened up. It's rich looking and very smooth. What I'm going to do is let it cool, and then tonight I'm going to have this over some spaghetti squash. And all I'll do is reheat it to a temperature that is hot enough to bring it back to just a slow simmer, and then put it over the spaghetti squash.